The Complete History of the Bible, Part 1, Before it was a book, the birth of the Old Testament. Long before printing presses, before Rome, before Greece, before even the nation of Israel existed, there were stories. Stories passed from father to son, around fires, in tents, in deserts. The earliest foundations of what we now call the Old Testament are traditionally connected to Moses, around the 13th century BC. According to Jewish and Christian tradition, Moses wrote the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But here's what's important. These texts weren't written all at once. They were preserved carefully on scrolls, copied by hand by trained scribes. Every letter counted, literally. Jewish scribes developed meticulous copying methods. If a single error was found in a scroll, it could be discarded. That's how sacred the text was. The formation of the Hebrew Scriptures. The Jewish Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, was divided into three parts: Torah, law; prophets, writings. By around 400 BC, after the ministries of prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, most of the Hebrew Scriptures were already recognized as authoritative. But here's something fascinating. In the 3rd century BC, Jewish scholars in Alexandria translated the Hebrew Scriptures into Greek. This translation is known as the Septuagint. Why does this matter? Because centuries later, this Greek version would be the Bible most early Christians used. Part 2, the arrival of the New Testament. Now we move forward to the 1st century AD. Enter Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus never wrote a book. Instead, his teachings were memorized, preached, and passed down orally by his disciples. After his death and resurrection, his followers began writing. The earliest New Testament writings weren't the Gospels. They were letters. The Apostle Paul the Apostle began writing letters to churches around 4865 AD, Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, and others. These letters were copied and circulated among churches. Then came the Gospels. Mark around 6070 AD. Matthew and Luke 7085 AD. John 9100 AD. Luke even tells us he investigated eyewitness accounts carefully. And John, he writes like someone who saw everything with his own eyes. The final New Testament book, Revelation, was written by John the Apostle, likely while exiled on the island of Patmos. By the end of the 1st century, all 27 New Testament books were written. But they weren't yet bound together. Part 3, how the Bible was copied and preserved. No printing press. No photocopiers. Every copy was handwritten. Scribes copied texts onto papyrus and later parchment. And here's what's incredible. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd discovered ancient scrolls in caves near the Dead Sea. These became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some dated back to 200 BC. When scholars compared them to medieval Hebrew manuscripts, copied over 1,000 years later, they found astonishing accuracy. The text had been preserved with remarkable precision. For the New Testament, we have over 5,000 Greek manuscripts. Some fragments, like the Rylands fragment of John, date to within decades of the original writing. No other ancient document has this level of manuscript evidence. Not Homer, not Plato, not Caesar. Part 4, who chose the books. Here where many people get confused. Did a council sit down and invent the Bible? No. The books were already widely used before any council officially listed them. By the early 2nd century, church leaders were already quoting the 4 Gospels as scripture. But false writings also began circulating, Gospels claiming secret teachings. So how did the church decide? They used 3 main criteria. 1. Apostolic authorship, written by an apostle or close companion. 2. Consistency with known teaching. 3. Widespread use among churches. In 367 AD, Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria listed the exact 27 books of the New Testament we have today. Later, councils such as the Council of Hippo, 393 AD, and the Council of Carthage affirmed this list. Important, they didn't create the canon. They recognized what was already accepted. Part 5, the Latin Bible and the Middle Ages. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, Latin became dominant. Around 400 AD, Jerome translated the Bible into Latin. This translation became known as the Vulgate. For over 1,000 years, this was the Bible of Western Europe. Monks in monasteries hand-copied scripture by candlelight. It could take years to copy a single Bible. Each one was a treasure. Part 6, the printing press revolution. Everything changed in 1455. Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable type printing press. The Gutenberg Bible was among the first major books ever printed. For the first time in history, the Bible could be mass-produced. Then came translation into common languages. In the 1500s, William Tyndale translated the New Testament into English from Greek. For this, he was executed. His final words reportedly were, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." A few decades later, the King James Version was published in 1611. Much of it relied heavily on Tyndale's work. So was the Bible changed over time? Here's the reality. Yes, minor copying variations exist. Spelling differences, word order shifts. But no central doctrine of Christianity rests on a disputed text. Textual criticism, comparing thousands of manuscripts, allows scholars to reconstruct the original wording with extraordinary confidence. In fact, the New Testament is more textually secure than any other ancient document. The Bible today. Today, the Bible is the most translated book in human history. It has been translated into over 3,000 languages. It survived Roman persecution, empire collapse, book burnings, political revolutions, skeptical scholarship, modern criticism, and yet it remains. Final reflection. The Bible didn't fall from the sky. It journeyed through deserts, exile, persecution, empires, monasteries, printing presses. From scroll to codex, to printed page, to digital screen. Copied by trembling hands. Guarded by persecuted believers. Debated by scholars. Proclaimed by martyrs. Whether one believes it is divinely inspired or not. Its historical journey is one of the most remarkable stories ever told. And that is the history of the Bible.